And it's a podcast about podcasts. It's a podcast about podcasts. Yeah, it's a podcast about podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast about podcasting. This is your host, Nate.com, and we're going to start off by talking to expert in the field, Podbert. So, Podbert, I have a question for you. What are some forms of voice recording in the classroom?
Thanks, Nate.com. Great question. So there's so many forms of voice recording that can be done in the classroom. One of which is reading a text out loud, for example, on an iPad with a recording device. And once the student is reading that text out loud, they've recorded their voice, the teacher can go back and evaluate their vocal script. Another form for older grades, they could be doing in a classroom setting or out of classroom setting. They could be going to do interviews with people in the community, and that's a great way to get them to engage in a different manner. So it's not just strictly recording their voice, but they have to plan for an interview.
Fantastic. And what are some challenges and limitations with podcasting in the classroom?
Yeah, there's so many different challenges and limitations. It depends on the classroom environment. First, I would name the accessibility of tablets or a recording device. Not all schools have access to tablets, but there are alternative ways of recording voices. Maybe there's another device that can be shared, or maybe the teacher may have a tablet that can be used for each student. Secondly, it could be the quality of the recording microphone, and you will need a quiet area. If you're not able to find a quiet area for using the recording device, it could be challenging for hearing what was said. And for the older grades, if they're planning an interview, there could be unexpected changes in planning or scheduling of an interview where the interviewee is not available, for example.
Thank you so much, Podbert. We are now joined by AILix, who's going to talk to us about how podcasting can relate to universal design for learning. So, AILix, what are the UDL principles?
Thank you for having me on your show, Nate.net. So there's three main UDL principles. They are multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action and expression. When thinking about podcasting, in terms of multiple means of engagement and motivation for students, the main one is that it allows for student voice. So kids can create podcasts about topics that they're really stoked about, and this podcast or the process of podcasting covers a lot of curriculum while they're doing it. They're also able to create podcasts for their peers, family, and community. They're able to use personal stories and their native language if they want. It helps them collaborate with one another and reduces performance pressure because they're able to record multiple takes, edit out mistakes, and kind of just have more fun with it.
How does podcasting apply to multiple means of representation?
Great question. It mostly allows learners to use different types of tech to record their podcast. They can use audio and or visual podcasting. It reduces reading barriers and it can support language learners. It's also really inclusive in terms of roles. If you're doing it with a group, you can divide it into different roles and everyone can choose a part that they feel comfortable doing. Some could be the sound editor, some could be the speaker, some could write the scripts. And it's just a more inclusive way of doing group projects.
How does UDL apply to multiple means of action and expression?
Yeah, so there's lots of different ways that students can use podcasting to create projects together. They could record an interview, they could create a story, they could host a debate, and this is really up to students' creativity. And yeah, just kind of a fun thing they can do. I also did some research on how classrooms can use listening to podcasts together to learn in a different way. So I read something where a class all used their phone to listen to the same podcast, went on a big walk together, and then discussed it later. It's just like an alternative way of learning and expressing themselves, and just kind of a cool thing.
Abso-podcast-lutely. Now we're joined by Podcastrid, who will be talking about using podcasting to incorporate the First People's principles of learning. So Podcastrid, how can we use podcasting to include diverse voices in the classroom in a meaningful and impactful way?
Thanks, Nate.org. Great question. Podcasting can be a great way to meaningfully support and include Indigenous voices directly into elementary classrooms. The First Peoples principles of learning remind us that learning is relational, reflective, experiential, and connected to community. Podcasting aligns well with all these principles, both when students create their own podcasts or when they listen to existing ones. When students create podcasts, they can share stories, practice deep listening, engage with knowledge, and honor different oral traditions. And when students listen to existing Indigenous podcasts, they can learn traditional information directly through knowledge keepers, reflect and engage with this information, and are learning in a really authentic way.
That's great. So students get a great perspective by both creating their own podcasts and listening to existing ones.
Exactly. Podcasting supports oral storytelling traditions that have been central to many Indigenous cultures for a very long time. It also allows Indigenous perspectives to be shared and talked about through an appropriate avenue as you're learning directly from someone talking about their experience. Facilitating students learning from local community members through podcasts is a powerful way for authentic information and connection. Some good activities to pair with listening are reflection journals, think, pair, share discussions, art expressions, or any inquiry questions that form while listening.
Very interesting. Anything else you'd like to add?
Sure. I'll just finish by saying that podcasting has the ability to shift learning about Indigenous communities to learning from Indigenous voices. This is an important distinction to make to students. Podcasting can really help students explore local areas in history, learn about languages and place names, which is really helpful to hear the language via a podcast, embark on land-based learning journeys, and reflect on what they're feeling or experiencing throughout the podcast. It's more than just a technological tool. Podcasting is a way to honor oral traditions, amplify Indigenous voices, and create space for authentic interactions and learning.
Podrific. Thanks so much to all of our experts who joined the podcast today. Just a little recap about what we talked about. From Podbert, we heard about different forms of voice recording in the classroom. And then AILIX educated us on universal design for learning related to podcasting. And then Podcastrid talked about the incorporation of Indigenous voices in the classroom. I've been Nate.com. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a good day.
I said it's a podcast about podcasts. It's a podcast about podcasts. Yeah, it's a podcast.